Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special council meeting. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. I would like to advise everyone that the audio and video of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that audio recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. So, with that, we move to item 1, which is the declaration of opening. I declare this meeting open at 6 p.m. Attendance by electronic means. Councillor Blake D'Souza has requested to attend tonight's meeting via electronic means. So, in accordance with Regulation 14C and 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, I have authorised Councillor D'Souza to attend the meeting by electronic means. Councillor D'Souza, in accordance with Regulation 14C, Sub-Regulation 5 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, can you maintain confidentiality during the meeting and when the meeting goes behind closed doors?
Yes, I can, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor D'Souza. Disclaimer. Members of the public are cautioned against taking any action as a result of a council decision until such time as they've seen a copy of the minutes or been advised in writing by the council's administration with regard to any particular decision. Item 2 is announcements from the presiding member. No such announcements this evening. And item 3 is attendance. Item 3.1 is apologies. There are no apologies for this evening. And item 3.2 is approved leaves of absence, of which there are nil for this evening. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Councillors, does anyone have any declarations of interest that they'd like to make this evening? No? Councillor D'Souza?
None, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so no declarations of interest this evening. Item 5 is public question time. So, in accordance with Regulation 7 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, all questions asked at this meeting must relate to the purpose of the meeting. I'll now open public question time at 3 minutes past 6 p.m. We haven't received any written submissions prior to tonight's meeting, and I'll just check with governance. No, there's no late questions in the tray, so I now close public question time at 3 minutes past 6 p.m. Item 6 is deputations. That's nil for this evening. Item 7 is reports. So we turn now to item 7.0.1. There's an officer recommendation before us. I haven't received any alternative motions or amendments. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation. Would someone be kind enough to second? Councillor Russell? Yep, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose the officer recommendation? Councillor D'Souza? Councillor D'Souza, do you oppose the officer recommendation? We haven't lost Councillor D'Souza, have we?
Yeah, sorry about that. No declarations to make.
Okay. We've moved on to item 7. So I've moved the officer recommendation at item 7.0.1. Councillor Russell has seconded it, and I've asked if anyone opposes the officer recommendation.
I have a number of questions.
All right. I guess we'll. Okay. On that case, I've moved. Councillor Russell has seconded. I'll speak. Councillors, Ms McGowan's tenure as monitor at the City of South Perth is currently due to conclude on Wednesday the 17th of June, tomorrow. As you know, the city is presently facing some challenges. We currently have a number of key personnel on leave, which is compounded by a higher than usual number of employee vacancies across the organisation and an elevated number of employees currently working in acting or higher duty capacities. That in turn puts pressure on our staff, but where we have key personnel absent, it also means that some of the usual sources of guidance, supervision and collegial support are necessarily reduced. We may have a number of employees, we do have a number of employees, particularly those in acting arrangements, who may find it more difficult to access timely direction or assistance. And we know all of this because these very issues are on the agenda for discussion at the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting to be held later this evening. Speaking for myself, I consider that Ms McGowan's presence at the city has been a positive and stabilising influence since her appointment, and I do think that the ongoing presence of Ms McGowan as monitor would be helpful in the current circumstances, particularly where the good governance of the city is concerned. So I hope you will support this motion. Councillor Russell, you're the seconder. Would you like to speak? No? Councillor Howling, I understand you have some questions.
Yes, thank you. And addressed through to the Acting Chief Executive Officer. I note the administration has really replicated the terms of references previously given. Was any consideration given to amending those terms of reference, considering that the monitor has now been in place for in excess of 3 months?
Ms Amprema?
Given the scope of the request for the special council meeting, the consideration for the terms of the monitor to be amended wasn't considered.
Councillor Howling.
Thank you. Clause 1.2 speaks about assisting the city to develop an action plan, setting out any necessary governance and or relationship improvements with specific regard to remedying identified issues relevant to the matters that are set out in the previous clause. In relation to that action plan, it's to assist the city. What's the progress that has been made by the administration together with the monitor in developing that action plan?
Ms Amprema?
Yeah, thank you for the question. At this point in time, there is no action plan in place.
Councillor Howling.
Thank you. To assist me, has an action plan in fact been commenced to be drafted together with the monitor at this time at all?
Ms Amprema?
No, there's no action plan in place or in draft.
Councillor Howling, another question?
Yes. It was said that there were key personnel on leave, and we're aware of that. At least 2 very senior staff members are presently still on leave. Can you tell us what may have been done, considering that was the reason, or one of the reasons given, for the monitor to be continued? What has been done in respect of assisting those key personnel and staff member back into the organisation to ensure that the staffing returns to the usual levels?
I'm not sure Ms Amprema is able to answer that in open session, but Ms Amprema?
Yeah, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to answer that question in the public forum.
Any further questions, Councillor Howling?
Yes, thank you. Now, you spoke, or at least the Mayor spoke about a positive and stabilising influence that the monitor has had. Are you aware of whether or not over the period of the last, or are you aware that over the period of the last 3 months, matters relevant to complaints have in fact increased amongst elected members?
Ms Amprema?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I haven't done any specific analysis on complaints trends over the period.
That's 5 questions, Councillor Howling. Do you have many more?
Yes.
Then please pick your best 2.
In accordance with what notice was given of the questions last night, and I sent through some questions, did you get those? Sorry, in relation to those questions, How many meetings have in fact been held together with the elected members that focused on governance matters that were included within the monitoring assignment terms of reference to ensure that relationships between council members, the practices and process in relation to post-appointment with the Chief Executive Officer, and other matters relevant to what is stated in clause 1.1 have in fact been undertaken?
Councillor Howling, the standing orders do say that questions need to be concise and succinct. Can you please restate that in a somewhat shorter format?
Yes, thank you. What governance measures consistent with clause 1.1 of the repeated terms of reference have in fact been actioned to date?
Thank you. Ms Ambrema?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, can I just clarify that you're asking questions relating to the monitor and elected members? Because my understanding is that the monitor is working with elected members.
Thank you. So clause 1.1 has a number of matters, and one of those is relationship between council members and between council members and the city employees. I need to consolidate and put it all into one question, but let's just take that question for example. What has been done to your knowledge in respect of that, and have you assisted or been involved in that particular aspect of those relationships?
Ms Ambrema?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. So if I haven't quite understood you correctly, please feel free to clarify. But if I understand your question correctly, where the monitor has met with elected members, the nature and extent or register of any of those meetings are not provided to the administration. So I would be unable to give you any information on that because that's not something that the monitor provides me with. And in terms of the relationship between the administration and council, where any matters have arisen, I've directly addressed them with specific elected members.
Thank you, Ms Ambrema. And your final question, Councillor Howling?
No, but I will be speaking in a moment.
Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is that an action plan is at the request of the inspector, and therefore an action plan prior to that would be a bit premature. Is my understanding correct?
Ms Ambrema?
I believe that is the case, yeah.
Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak against the officer recommendation? No? Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favour? Councillor Prendeville.
A question, if I may, please.
Of course.
Thank you. I did send through a couple of questions last week as well. I just wanted to interrogate it a little bit further. I know, and I'm not opposing the extending of the monitor's appointment. I just want to, you know, we know that the daily rate is high. It's a significant cost. It's all very positive for our community. But when we get asked the questions of, you know, to interrogate this, I think I just needed some more information as to, you know, what will the positives be drawing out from extending the monitor's time at the city. I suppose I did want to understand when a letter is written to our local government inspector requesting the extension, is there justification that will accompany this, and what would that look like in terms of specific reasons to support the extension request?
Oh, I've got to be consistent, Councillor Prendeville. Could you restate that the question succinctly and concisely, please?
Yes, of course. Apologise. Will there be justification that will accompany the letter to our local government inspector requesting the extension, and what might that contain in terms of specific reasons?
Ms Ambrema?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. So if council were to resolve in accordance with the officer recommendation, then we would simply write to the inspector with a copy of council's resolution.
Thank you, Ms Ampremo. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the officer recommendation?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Howling.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm not speaking against the appointment of the monitor, but to simply restate the terms of reference which were put forward in February and over a period of time have been redeveloped and were required to initially be reported on the 29th of April, which term was extended to the 17th of June and now proposed to be further extended, without any report back to the council of what action plan is being developed in accordance with the clause 1.2, and without any significant tangible benefits at the moment in respect of those items contained within the terms of reference, it's my view that if the council has the opportunity to put a letter back to the inspector, to make clear what the deliverables ought properly to be in this renewed period or this extended period, it would serve the council. It would assist. Now, I understand and know from my perspective that the monitor has been active and involved in relationships that exist at least between councillors, and particularly the councillors and the mayor, in the way within which they work together and the leadership is able to be taken in the council working better to identify how we can ensure that we deliver good governance and ensure that when we are doing our work, we do so in a manner that listens to everybody and hears everybody's voice. For example, the developments of the budget, and the way within which it is necessary to have been a process that was undertaken to hear everybody through that process. We've got work that we need to do. I'm only speaking against re-putting or again establishing these particular terms of reference. And for that reason, whereas I'm not against the appointment of the monitor, it is my view that this particular terms of reference are not the terms of reference that ought to be adopted. And for that reason, I would like to see that at least it be amended, and that is the terms of reference be amended, and that new terms of reference be established between the Chief Executive Officer and the monitor to identify implementation of a number of the matters that she may have identified over the period of the last short period, including the work, health and safety issues that have been required to be reported, which are of urgent and important attention for this local government. We had to have a meeting some time ago in relation to the work, health and safety psychosocial study that was proposed by the Chief Executive Officer. That was overturned when it was rejected. But nevertheless, there should be some outcomes and we ought to receive some benefit for our community. So in terms of these particular terms of reference, these no longer are going to be precisely fit for purpose. A lot of the things that have already been done, we can work better by identifying those things that we can do to work together with the monitor to implement certain things. I've only mentioned the work, health and safety. I think of an action plan. We've really got to go to the implementation stage to take advantage of paying a monitor approximately $900 per day for the benefit of the ratepayers of the city, particularly when funds are particularly tight. And so for that reason, I wish to move an amendment that the terms of reference be reviewed together with the Chief Executive Officer and the monitor so that the terms of reference are fit for purpose and that we're not just simply recasting and resetting the terms of reference that were set in February of this year. So those are my comments.
Councillor Howling, I haven't received an amendment from you prior to this meeting. I don't know if Governance has received an amendment from you prior to this meeting. Governance, has anything been received? No, it hasn't. So what is the amendment that you are proposing in the chamber?
Thank you. The amendment is that the terms of reference be developed together with the Chief Executive Officer and the monitor so that they are current and fit for purpose. Fit for purpose being fit for what we are doing presently. There are many of those, Mr Mayor, if I may, and
Councillor Howling, I didn't ask you to speak further to the amendment. I asked
Okay,
what
that's
your
fine.
amendment was. So can you read out what your amendment actually is?
that the terms of reference, I don't know if somebody's writing this down, that the terms of reference be developed and amended in consultation between the Chief Executive Officer and the monitor, so that they are fit for present purposes.
Governance, is that an alternative motion or is that an amendment?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It would be an amendment to part 2. It doesn't change the intent of the motion to write to the monitor, or the inspector, sorry.
All right. Can we get that up on the screen then, please? All right. So everyone's got that up on the screen now? I assume so. Does anyone wish to second Councillor Howling's amendment? Councillor Waugh is the seconder. Councillor Howling, you may speak to your amendment if you would like to do so.
Thank you. The reason I'm proposing this particular amendment is that many of the terms of reference, as I spoke a moment ago, have either been things that have been done or alternatively things that haven't been attended to that might require some attention. For example, I'm thinking now in particular of having workshops together with the council to implement what might be considered to be an action plan. While we have the monitor here and taking advantage of what she's done over the last 3 months, I would consider this to be of significant benefit to the ratepayers if there were some ways within which we were able to identify those matters which require, together with the monitor, require implementation and action. For example, if one were to consider the council member, understanding of the performance of the collective and individual roles and responsibilities, and I touched on this a moment ago, being the roles and responsibilities of the mayor, the councillors and the administration and the Chief Executive Officer, those are matters that I would have imagined would have been caught up by the present monitor, and she would have a very clear understanding of how those roles and responsibilities are properly being implemented. In terms of the relationship as between the council members and the city employees, this is an area that in my view will have taken a lot of focus and will have received a lot of attention by the monitor. Identifying how we're able to implement outcomes and ensure that there is at least an ongoing ability to encourage good relationships which are built on trust as opposed to built on a system by which each member of the council complains about anything that anybody else has done, in my view, would be helpful. The monitor has made very clear a number of positions which some councillors have not necessarily adopted on all and each occasion. Further, the practices and processes in respect of the obligations to the Chief Executive Officer, in my view, do not appear to have been at least given very much attention from my perspective. That is, how we ensure that the Chief Executive Officer, who's presently away on personal leave, is given the necessary support to assist her back into the role, which, as I understand, Mr Mayor, was one of the reasons for why you had suggested the extension of the period of the monitor's appointment. There are other matters that, in my view at the very least, require significant attention. For example, worker health and safety provisions and the PCBU. We had some attention given to this a period of time ago, and in my view, we need to ensure that whatever it is that is necessary, we need to work together with the monitor. In other words, the way within which we can ensure safety of the staff by interactions with staff are something that councillors need to put in the forefront of their minds. And additionally, to identify the council's ability and council members to perform their roles, as is included in 1.1G, is necessary. All of this is really and ought properly to be envisaged to be included within an action plan, because at 1.2 it says assist the city, and there is an assumption that the city includes the broader local government. When the word, of course, council is used in any document, that is the elected members. It's not the mayor individually. That's why we use the word council in a contract of employment or any other document. It refers to the council, all of us, and not any one person individually. But in this instance, the word purposely has been used, the city. And if, as the acting chief executive officer has stated, I mean no disrespect, nothing has been done in respect to that, we can expect, or we should be able to expect, that an action plan is to be developed, taking into account a number of those matters that I've already mentioned, to ensure that there is a better working relationship between the councillors in undertaking their statutory roles, and to ensure that they're able to properly fulfil the statutory function of those roles. And so for that reason, it's my view that it's necessary to have the Chief Executive Officer, together with the Monitor, redevelop these terms of reference to focus really around clause 1.2 to move into the action phase. It can't be that we're still in the investigation phase of what the problems are and what the issues are, because originally this was intended to be an appointment until the 29th of April 2026, and now we have extended to the 17th of June, and beyond that there is work to be done. So what I am saying is we need to really focus on the next phase, being the implementation, an action plan around a number of the matters that are identified in clause 1.1, and we need to ensure that that receives...
That's 5 minutes, Councillor Howling. I'll move a motion that you be granted a further 5 minutes to speak. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Prendeville. Councillors, please cast your votes on a motion that Councillor Howling be granted a further 5 minutes. And Councillor D'Souza, how do you vote?
4.
All right, thank you. That was unanimous. Please continue, Councillor Howling.
Of an adopted new set of terms of reference for the benefit of the ratepayers and the council as a whole. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howling. Governance, can I just confirm that the amendment from Councillor Howling actually forms a new point 3 to the officer recommendation? All right, good. I just got a bit confused looking at the screen there.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, that needs to be confirmed by Councillor Howling. That is how we've read that. But
Councillor Howling, is that correct?
sorry, if we can just bring that up on the screen. So part 2 would remain the same in that the revised date would change in the terms of reference, but there would be a new part 3 inserted as per your wording.
All right. Councillor Waugh, you're the seconder. Would you like to speak? All right, well, we're on the amendment at the moment. Okay. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a question. Were the original terms of reference prepared by the inspector or the monitor?
Ms Amprema.
They were prepared at the time the monitor was appointed, so I would assume the inspector prepared the terms of reference, but...
So just following on from that, I'm just a bit unsure as to whether it is the role of the CEO and the monitor to reconsider the terms of reference, or whether that would be the inspector. Or I'm not sure, perhaps Councillor Howling is suggesting that we recommend, or the CEO and the monitor recommend terms of reference to the inspector.
Who should I send this to, folks? Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My understanding is that whilst the CEO can write to the local government inspector making the request, ultimately the decision and the actual terms of appointment are determined by the local government inspector.
Thank you. And is it possible that the CEO could have some discussions with the monitor about the action plan and report back to the council.
Ms Amprema?
Yeah, that is possible.
All right. Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Councillor Russell.
Just a question, thank you. Noting that this involves the CEO, does the CEO wish to say anything to this respect?
Ms Amprema?
My only comment would be I don't have any issue with the amendment that's proposed.
Councillors, does anyone wish to speak against the amendment? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a lot to take in a short time, but my understanding is that I'm not aware of the specific circumstances that led to the inspector's decision to appoint the monitor in the first instance. It sounded from what the inspector said it was multifactorial. And as Councillor Howling said, one of the key functions of the monitor is to assist the city to develop an action plan, which amongst other things is to remedy the issues that she identifies under clause or part 1.1A through to G of the terms of reference. From my perspective, I agree with Councillor Howling in that there are a number of items already under clause or part 1.1 that have not been completed yet by the monitor, and that's due to a number of extenuating circumstances that couldn't have been foreseen at the time the inspector developed. I'm assuming it is the inspector, given that it does reference it's to do with functions and powers under the Local Government Act, which if I had time I'd probably go back to understand that. But in my mind, we haven't completed the first step yet, which is this step, and there are extenuating circumstances as to why that is, and that it's appropriate for the terms of reference to be completed first, and the action plan, sort of contrary to what was said before, is going to come out of that work being completed. So I'm also not comfortable, while I understand the gist of where Councillor Howling may be coming from in relation to this, that it is very important that the city has input into this scope. I don't really think that the avenue, and this is really again on short notice because I hadn't heard about this until now, is that the correct process for these terms of reference being revised would be firstly to request the extension of time, and I'm sure that the monitor has been in discussions quite regularly with the inspector, and that is going to be open to the inspector to say if the inspector agrees to the extension of time, then the inspector may wish to adjust and modify these. So that would be my preferred approach, is to request the extension of the date if that's what council agrees, and then from there it's really it's the inspector who is driving this, and the inspector who is aware of what the original circumstances were that led to the appointment of the monitor. So I will be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Raison. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to? Councillor Wall?
Sorry, just on that motion, I understand it was the inspector that made the appointment and the inspector that set the terms of reference. But I understood it's the inspector who's potentially requested that we bring this motion. Is that correct?
Ms Amprema? I haven't got my computer open in front of me, but I have received an email from the inspector suggesting that he'd like to consider a request from the council on the question of extending the monitor's time frame. I don't have that in front of me, but that was the gist of it. Councillors, would anyone who hasn't spoken so far like to speak in favour of the amendment? No. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? Councillor Brenda Abratis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I won't be supporting this amendment as I feel that the terms of reference that were established were fit for purpose at the time. I don't consider that in a 3-month period there's been substantial change that would result in a fit for present purposes being somewhat different. The terms of reference that was established was for a purpose, and I don't consider that we need to make an amendment in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak in favour of the amendment? Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? I'll speak. Councillors, it won't be a surprise to any of you that I'm generally speaking not a big fan of last-minute amendments. There has been plenty of time to discuss any potential changes to the Monitor's terms of reference prior to tonight's meeting. Tonight is the first I've heard from anyone suggesting that they should be changed. That's okay. But Councillor Lees was right. I do believe it is the inspector that sets the terms of reference, not the CEO or even the Monitor. But I'm sure that the inspector is in close contact with the Monitor, and the inspector has the power to amend the terms of reference if the inspector thinks that that's appropriate. So, and I'm sure that the inspector will become aware of this meeting, and if the inspector does decide that, yes, you know what, a review of the terms of reference is appropriate, he has the power to make that happen. So with that in mind, I don't see the need for the amendment, and I'll be supporting the officer recommendation as it's published in the agenda. Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against the amendment? Councillor Russell, I see your lights on.
Yes, I've got a question. So I'm just trying to understand the objective of this motion now. It says that the local government inspector wrote to your good self advising that the terms of appointment are to be amended. So why is council making a resolution that the terms of reference are to be amended in terms of the date? The inspector is doing it.
Ms Amprema? Or Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. If you're referring to part 2, the existing terms of reference have a date in which the report is required to be submitted, and if council resolves to extend the timeframe of the Monitor, it would be appropriate that the date in the terms of reference be amended to reflect that.
Just following that, I'm just, again, on query, is that if the terms of reference are owned by the inspector, then why doesn't he amend and then provide that information to council?
Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was to bring the matter to the Monitor and the inspector's attention should council resolve to do so.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to speak either for or against the amendment who hasn't already spoken?
Mr Mayor.
Councillor D'Souza.
Yeah, I'd like to speak in favour. I would just say briefly, I don't think this is an especially controversial amendment. This matter, I guess, hinges on the fact that are we the same organisation we were 3 months ago when the Monitor was first appointed? And I would say in some regards, the difference is now the Monitor has a lot more context and information about council. And I agree with the Mayor that the appointment of Ms McGowan has been a positive force on this council, and I welcome the extension, but I think reviewing or requesting a review of the terms of reference might actually end up providing greater clarity to council on potential findings the Monitor would potentially make, and would actually strengthen the Monitor's hand to guide council forward. So I don't see it as a controversial amendment. I think it's just simply a request. It's not compelling the inspector or the Monitor to do anything. It's just saying that we work with the CEO and the Monitor to review these terms of reference, and it might actually lead to a positive outcome. So I support the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor D'Souza. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak for or against who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Prendeville.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm going to speak in favour of the amendment, and similarly to Councillor D'Souza, I don't think it's considerably controversial. I think that, it was mentioned that bringing this timing aspect to the attention of the monitor inspector, which may have been part of the reasoning behind the motion, is a positive thing. So let's also bring the terms of appointment to their attention also. And then, like we've established, if the local government inspector sees it appropriate to amend, then he will. But I don't think it hurts anybody by bringing it to the attention and popping it in as a point 3 to the motion itself. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendeville. Councillors, is there anyone? Councillor Lees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would be speaking against the amendment, only because I'm just a little bit concerned about the lateness of it and getting my head around it, and whether it is our or the CEO's role with the monitor to be adjusting it and what those adjustments might be, and whether they are actually a variation to the existing terms of reference, or whether it's just progressing the things within the current terms of reference. So there seemed to be a suggestion about the action plan, and I understand Councillor Howling's comments on that, but maybe it is those matters being progressed further rather than amending the references. So, yeah, without having appropriate time to consider this and being mindful that it is the inspector's role to establish the terms of reference, I don't think I can support it as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Councillors, is there anyone who hasn't spoken either for or against the amendment who would like to do so? No. In that case, Councillor Howling, you have 5 minutes to rebut any arguments made in debate against the amendment, if you would like to do so.
Thank you. Of course, if you need a deferral, that's always available. It's not a particularly complex or controversial proposal by way of what is being proposed. I regularly see either at DAPS or alternatively at these meetings where matters are put at the last minute and we're able to work around it. This is not particularly difficult. What it's saying is, please, can the Chief Executive Officer work together with the monitor to recommend to the inspector that which we ought to have by way of what is current and fit for purpose by way of a review of the terms of reference. I do not agree with Councillor Brenda Abrandis to suggest that the current terms of reference are fit for purpose and are current. One only has to look at 1.1c, which says the Council's practices and processes in relation to the post-appointment obligations to the Chief Executive Officer, including the development and monitoring of the performance criteria, KPIs, as required under section 5.39, which is the Council itself, not any one individual, developing what those terms of reference might be, or KPIs might be. And look at F. These matters, there has been a change. Unless we're all sitting here and don't realise, but there has been a significant change within this organisation. We have staff who are away on personal leave. We need to change the terms of reference to cater for what the present circumstances are. And I see 1.1e, which is to work with the Work Health and Safety Act. And in the meantime, we've had a psychosocial study which is being developed and is underway. That term of reference can be more fit for purpose. And I can think of a myriad of other ways within which these terms of reference have changed because of the change in the council. There is not a collegiate relationship amongst councillors, and those things need work. And I think that the monitor will have identified those things and is able to work together with the Chief Executive Officer to make recommendations to the inspector for how the terms of reference can be fit for purpose. It's not complex. It's not difficult. It's asking our respected Acting Chief Executive Officer to work together with the monitor to propose to the inspector what might be by way of their proposals. And I adopt exactly what Councillor Russell insightfully asked. Why would it be that the inspector is asking us to adopt an extension of the period of the time, but then simply adopt the same terms of reference when we all know, sitting around the table, that there's been a change of circumstances, a change of temperature. The temperature in the room has increased, not decreased. And I accept entirely what Councillor D'Souza says. Are we are the same organisation as 3 months ago? Have the circumstances improved? Those things require very careful consideration by each one of us. And there is a lot of work that needs to be done by the inspector in respect of the way within which we need to develop that action plan. An action plan that hopefully will see some of our very senior staff who are presently on personal leave return to the organisation to assist. An action plan which sees ways within which we can work together with work health and safety legislation and the psychosocial study. An action plan that sees ways within which councillors can work together collectively as opposed to in a very disjointed way. An action plan that sees leadership being given in the way within which we're able to operate within this organisation. An action plan that is for the benefit of the ratepayers. An action plan that ensures that when we develop a budget, for example, that each one of the councillors is able to make an input into the way within which that is to be developed. An action plan and a way within which we're able to work which is current and fit for purpose. And so I say that this present terms of reference do need to be changed. And it's true, and what I think Councillor Russell mentioned it. It is absolutely true that the inspector is able to make amendments to these terms of reference himself, and he's able to do that perhaps with the Chief Executive Officer to the Monitor.
30 seconds, Councillor Howling.
However, we should provide some leadership and say these are the sorts of things that we think ought properly to be implemented, and the Monitor and the Chief Executive Officer go and visit the inspector to say these are the types of terms of reference that will benefit this particular organisation because there are still problems within the city of South Perth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howling. Councillors, I'm putting Councillor Howling's amendment to the officer recommendation to the vote. If it carries, we'll go back to the substantive as amended. If it doesn't carry, we'll go back to the officer recommendation unamended, but we are now voting on Councillor Howling's amendment. Councillors, please cast your votes. And how do you vote, Councillor D'Souza?
4.
Okay, so the votes are in. Those who voted in favour of Councillor Howling's amendment were Councillor Blake D'Souza, Councillor Tim Howling, Councillor Hayley Prendeville and Councillor Bronwyn Moore. Those who voted against were Councillor Andre Brender-Abrandis, Councillor Kathy Lees, Mayor Greg Milner, Councillor Jacqueline Raison and Councillor Stephen Russell. Okay, so the amendment has been unsuccessful. We return to the substantive officer recommendation. So far, I moved it. Councillor Russell seconded it. I spoke. Councillor Russell, I don't think you spoke, did you? Or did you? Did?
I simply didn't take the opportunity.
No, that's right. Okay, yes. And I don't think anyone else has spoken yet. Is there anyone who would like to speak against the officer recommendation? Councillor Waugh.
It's not entirely against, but it's more against than for. I just wanted to express my concerns in respect to this motion. And from the outset, I do want to make it clear that my comments are not intended in any way as a criticism, neither of the Monitor nor of the Inspector's decision to appoint the Monitor, or any of the process that's undertaken from there. But I do have a concern as to whether Council has been provided with sufficient information to be able to make this decision to justify yet another extension of the appointment at the expense of ratepayers. Obviously, when a monitor is appointed, you would expect to see clear objectives and measurable outcomes and evidence of the progress against those outcomes. I am aware that obviously we have terms of appointment. Yes, they're somewhat outdated and clearly we need to leave that to the Inspector to come up with something that's a little bit more current, but notwithstanding that, largely that's the limit of the information that I have been provided. So as an elected member, I'm struggling to identify what specific improvements have been achieved to date, what additional outcomes are expected to be delivered during that proposed extension period. I'm also acutely aware that since the appointment, the organisation has continued to experience significant challenges, including ongoing governance tensions, continued complaints, including elected members, senior staff departures and extended absences from key leadership positions. As I look around the table, there are a lot of people not sitting in seats that have their names on them, and that is a concern. I'm not suggesting these matters are the responsibility of the monitor for a moment. However, it does make it very difficult for me to conclude that the underlying conditions or issues have been materially improved. And so my concern comes down to the committing further public funds in circumstances where we're presently looking at the budget. I'd like to better understand what outcomes have been achieved against the objectives that have been set and established at the commencement of the appointment, what remains outstanding, and why an additional extension has been required on top of the other extension that we've already had. I'm aware that as elected members, we have a responsibility to ensure that every expenditure of ratepayer funds can be justified. And at present, with the information that I have, which is very limited, I'm not satisfied that we have sufficient information to support the proposed extension. And so for that reason, I do have reservations about the recommendation before us. And I absolutely agree with my colleague, Councillor Brander at Brandis, when he says there has been no substantial change since her appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak in favour of the officer recommendation? No? Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? No. Councillor De Souza, did you wish to speak either for or against?
No.
All right. Councillor Prendeville.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, please may I speak?
Of course.
Thank you. I will be speaking in favour of the recommendation. I did have a few concerns and I put these in some questions last week, and I think they were mostly around, okay, we want to extend the monitor. Monitor's been a great thing, but I suppose similarly to Councillor Waugh, I wanted to understand more about, what's been happening. Can we get some clarity on exactly how the monitor has been providing that stable influence, what actions have occurred with the city, and those sorts of, specifics. I think, and one of those things was if we write to the local government inspector asking for the extension, how is that going to be received? And part of my thought process was, what accompanying information would go along with that? What are our reasons as to why we need this extension, this second extension? But I suppose since learning, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the local government inspector contacted us about, or yourself, Mr Mayor, about the extension. So it seems like there's already communication from that, which is good to know because that was part of my decision process. I think I heard that correctly this evening. So I'm not opposed to the extension of the monitor. I respect the work that Ms McGowan has done. She's played a great role, and personally I've built a positive relationship with her. Speaking to her only just this afternoon. Again, this is a significant cost and one that we must, be able to answer the questions from our ratepayers, and they will rightly ask what value they are receiving for it. And it is, I would think about tangible outcomes and actions that have occurred in that. I understand the positive nature, and I think one of the reasons why I will support the extension is because we have not quite received the assessment, the psychosocial risk assessment that is being underway, and I think that's a really important piece to this puzzle, and so I'm happy to receive that and that be part of the work that the monitor will do with the city. And I think that's a really important piece of work that's happening. The focus on the mental health and the psychosocial safety, especially of everyone involved, and noting that the administration staff and directors have been under enormous pressure as of late with obvious vacancies and a budget process, the extra sort of stress and that everyone has been working really hard through. So I'm happy to support this extension. I don't wasn't quite comfortable with the lack of, I suppose, information that was received back, but, you know, it's not a deal breaker for me. I think the most important thing for me is the result of the psychosocial risk assessment, and hopefully seeing some more outcomes and actions from here until the 17th of August. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendeville. And just, I suppose, so everyone's on the same page, there's been a couple of questions as to where did that correspondence from the inspector come from? So I'll clear that up. On the 28th of May, I sent an email to Tony Brown asking if Ms McGowan's tenure could be extended. I got an email back from the inspector, Tony Brown, on the 5th of June. I won't read the whole thing, but the relevant part is I would be prepared to consider an extension if it was something the council wanted, and by that I mean a formal council resolution to request an extension. So I hope that gives everyone clarity. Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against the officer recommendation who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Raison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have been in two minds about this proposed recommendation. I do think that it has been, on balance, a positive that we have had the monitor with us through some unpredictable changes. My concern about the extension of time is that I also have a feeling that, to a degree, as everything in a sense feels slightly slowed down so that we can reassess and regroup, that we really do need to be getting on with the business of the city from a strategic point of view as a council. I'm aware that the monitor's been very accessible, and I spoke with the monitor myself so that I would have a reasonable basis for my decision, and raise my concerns with her. And I guess overall where I've come to is that if we can start to set these things right that have been identified by the terms of reference, then I'm hoping from there we can drive greater strategic performance as a council. In order to do that, though, we need something tangible. And if we don't extend or request this extension, it may be denied us anyway, then from what I've heard tonight, we won't have an action plan, and that's really the only thing that I'm interested in, and that's why I ran, is because of strategic action. So as I've looked at all these factors, I have come to the decision that I will support it, because that action plan has not been able to be completed despite everyone's best efforts. Everybody on the council, as far as I'm aware, has been cooperating with the monitor. The administration has been working very hard in difficult circumstances, and the monitor herself has had to have a certain degree of flexibility in moving from one issue to the next as the situation changes. So I am very keen to get that action plan. I do hope that it is delivered within this time frame. I agree that there may be other things to be considered, but I don't have the picture that the monitor has. On council, I have 1/9 of a picture, so I don't know those discussions. If it's appropriate, then the inspector will vary the terms of reference. He will be more informed than we will be in terms of the monitor's discussions and investigations so far. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Raison. Councillors, is there anyone else who would... Councillor Lees.
I just wanted to speak very briefly. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to say that I think it's regrettable that we are now at a point where we are looking at an extension, because I think for the council and the city's benefit, it would have been better if we could have stuck to the shorter time frame and get to fixing the issues that we have here. But I am very mindful that the psychosocial risk assessment needs to be considered as part of the final report. So that is the reason why I'm supporting the recommendation. I don't think it's appropriate for the report to be... well, I think it would be premature for the monitor to deliver a report without that assessment. So that's my reason for support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lees. Councillors, is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm speaking briefly for the item. So I consider the extension to be appropriate. It's based on merit. We've heard tonight that the action plan has not been realised, and this is actually an important feature that needs to be undertaken, and the monitor's input is quite important to this. The unforeseen circumstances that have occurred this year do warrant an extension to the monitoring process through the Department of Local Government, through the Inspector's Office. I see the additional costs to be incurred with regard to a monitor in place to be value for money, given the circumstances, and to be an investment in the leadership and also the council. I don't see this to be a cost or burden to the ratepayers. As Councillor Lees has indicated tonight, the psychosocial assessment should be given consideration as part of the outcome under reporting, and it is a point too soon. The unforeseen circumstances have resulted in delays and also an impact on the administration in undertaking some of the tasks. So I think it is only appropriate that we extend this period. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brandis. Councillors, is there anyone? Councillor Russell, you've got your light on.
Yes, thank you. I just need to get confirmation, please, just to get my head clear. So the initiative to extend the monitor's period was with the Mayor. You wrote to the Inspector, and the Inspector said he is amenable to such through a resolution of Council. Is my understanding correct?
That's right, although I should say it's possible that other people may have made a similar request to the Inspector. I wouldn't necessarily know that, but I can confirm that I contacted the monitor, the Inspector. Maybe others did as well, but this is the only one I can speak to. Would anyone else like to speak either for or against? No. In that case, it's left to me to wind up. I won't speak for long, councillors. For the reasons I've previously stated, I do think it's appropriate that we extend the time frame. Certainly, the City of South Perth has faced some challenges in recent months. Some of them are detailed in the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee papers for later this evening. I do think the monitor has visibility of issues that perhaps elected members don't always necessarily have 100% visibility of. And as some other councillors have mentioned, I think it would be very useful for the monitor to be able to have regard to the results of the psychosocial risk assessment that's currently going on before preparing an action plan and perhaps making recommendations to the Inspector, which in turn the Inspector will then make presumably some kind of recommendations or observations about. So given that if we don't support the motion in front of us, Ms McGowan's tenure expires tomorrow, I really think we should be approving the request for the CEO to write to the Inspector requesting an extension of Ms McGowan's tenure. That's all I'll say. I'll simply put the officer recommendation to the vote. Councillors, please cast your votes. And Councillor D'Souza, how would you like to vote?
For.
All right. So that was unanimous. Thank you all. That now brings us to item 8, which is closure. I declare the meeting closed at 3 minutes past 7 p.m. Thank you all and good night.